In today's video, adjustable shelves. And we already have our shelf pin holes from the previous video. I hope you guys seen the first and second video of this cabinet making series. In the first video, we broke down the plywood. Second video, we went to put it all together. We also did the shelf pin holes first, because it's just easier to assemble that way. Now, like I said in the previous video, if you have a shelf pin jig, like the Craig system or the one from Rockler, you can go ahead and put everything together and then you can drill your shelf pin holes afterwards, because that's going to reference off the bottom shelf. So since we had that all done, I'm not going to be drilling any shelf pin holes in this video, but we are going to be working on the shelves themselves. So the shelves are just the 18mm plywood that we're working with here, and I used 19mm solid wood edge banding, and then we tack nailed that on. We have our shelf pins in place right here, and they are adjustable, so you can move them anywhere you need to. If you wanted to put one down lower than the other for the purposes of whatever you wanted to store in the cabinet, you would just go ahead and do that. Move the shelf pins down, pop the shelf back in, and now you can see you have adjustability to put these shelves pretty much wherever you want. There are 6 different heights that you can adjust this to satisfy your needs of whatever you're going to put in there. All right, so let's get started. So the shelves for the base unit, I only need 2 of them. They need to be 285mm in total width or depth from front to back, and that's going to be with the 19mm edge banding, or 3/4 inch poplar that we're going to solid edge band it with. So I've set up my parallel guides for the track saw. I've already ripped a straight line on this. You've seen that before in the first video in this cabinet series, where I break down the plywood. If you haven't seen that, make sure you go and reference that. So basically you need to rip a straight edge on the end of the board to get rid of the factory edge, which is all jagged and not straight, and you need that as a reference point to continue to make everything parallel to each other. So I have them both set at 280mm, so I'm just going to go ahead and push in the middle until they hit. Now that side contacting, and now that side's contacting. Go ahead and put on my safety equipment, and we'll make this cut. Once again, make sure that you mark your board so that you know what it is when you put it off to the side. I have my portable cabinet shop set up, so I'm just going to move the rail out of the way. We need to square up one of the edges. This is my reference edge that I ripped straight. So take a straight line rip. I need 805mm, but we need to make it 804 because we need to take off a millimeter. So it has some play in there. You can even take off 2mm, maybe 803. This way you can put it on an angle, drop it on the shelf pins. So what I'm going to do is measure and mark out 806 so that I can oversize the first cut, square off that edge, flip the board over, and then mark it again and cut it to exactly 804 or 803. We'll cut it at 804, put it in, see how it fits. If it's a little too snug, we'll take off another millimeter. Okay guys, really quick now, we're going to start to do the solid edge banding. So I cut a piece straight off the edge there to make it 90. So first I'm going to make it 810mm because I have the shelves ripped at 804mm and they fit perfectly in the case, and I'll show you that in a minute. But I want to oversize this a little bit because I still have the stop block set up on the MFT table. So after I cut this down and I rip 2 strips, we can just take that piece and we can run it up against the stop block, and I'm going to make it perfect with the edge of both sides of the shelf. So everything will be nice and perfectly flush on the sides, and then we can flush trim the little bit of a lip, because this is 19mm stock and the plywood is 18mm. So we got a little bit of an overhang. That's what we want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my parallel guides to 15 because that's roughly about 5/8 of an inch, and it's a little more stout. I want these to have a little bit of stiffness at the end of the shelves because I want them to maintain their flatness. I don't want them to sag over time, even though they're going to be holding light items on them. You can see here I have bagger boards, and I have it set to the thin rip portion, and I have it sitting on top of a sacrificial piece of wood right there, and now I'm hitting on both sides, so I can go ahead and rip the first piece. Okay, so a couple of quick things. These are 5mm shelf pins. Now you remember in the previous video, before we assembled the cabinet, we drilled those holes with the LR32 system. So I'm just going to count the amount of holes down that I want the shelf to sit on, and that's going to be the third hole from the top. And then the shelves go in just like this. Put them in on an angle like that. We cut these just 1mm shy of the inside opening, and you see they fit in there perfect. And we left just enough room to make our 15mm solid wood edge banding. Now these are obviously not going to fit because I oversized them, but they're going to sit on the front of the shelf just like that and give it the appearance of a solid piece of wood. And it's also going to give it rigidness so it doesn't sag over time. Another thing you'll notice is that I screwed on a separate top, and that's for two reasons. Number one, to house and give support to the upper towers that are going to be on here, but also as a place for the face frame, because when the rails and stiles go in, they're going to sit completely under that, and it's going to hide the top of the end grain, and then there's going to be a piece of solid trim that's going to be nailed onto this with dominoes. It's going to be mitered on the corner and returned back to the wall. So you can see what I did when I screwed that on from the inside. I made it completely flush with the 19mm poplar material, because once I install the face frame, I want that completely flush so that when I install that trim piece, it hides everything. Alright, so now let's get the edge banding on these shelves, and we're going to install those on the front with glue, and we're going to just tack them in with brad nails, just so that we don't have to let it sit in the clamps overnight while it dries. Then we're going to flush trim everything up. And I'll show you how to use the flush trim bit on a router so that you get a perfectly smooth top, and we're going to just trim that off, and the whole thing's going to be one solid unit. You don't have to do it. You could leave an overhang, a little bit of a lip on the bottom if you want, but I'm just going to make everything all the same size. If you're asking what this device is right here, this is the Vaxis. It's been discontinued, so don't ask me for a link because I can't provide you with one. It took me 8 months to get this. They don't make it for the United States anymore, some kind of a certification problem with the vacuum pump. But it's going to hold the material down while I glue and nail the edge banding in place. Now that I have the pieces all trimmed flush, and you can see even with my nail there's no catching, so now I'm just going to lightly sand everything down, Remember 120 grit because these are already pre-sanded from the factory. So if you go any higher really than, any lower. If you go any lower on the grits than 120, you're going to really run the risk of burning through the veneer. Okay guys, so obviously edge banding with solid wood is quick and easy, but you still have to cut the wood, glue it, and nail it on, or in some cases if you want, you can domino it, depending on how thick the edge banding is. But another alternative is if you're not doing solid wood edge banding and you want to use the veneer type, this is pre-glued. I don't know if the camera can really pick this up, but it has the glue on there, which is heat activated. Now you've seen me do this in other videos before. You would just take the edge banding, which is just slightly thicker than your material, and the pre-glued edge banding will sit right on the edge, and then you take a household iron and you would just heat it up, iron it on, and then you would just take a piece of scrap wood and you basically just like press it on there to make sure that you get good adhesion, and then you would trim it either with an edge trimming router, or you could even take a file and you'd be able to scrape those edges off with the file. So that's just another alternative, and that's pre-glued edge banding. I hope you guys can hear me over the vacuum. I don't think it's really that loud to pump, but you should be able to hear me. That's why I'm trying to talk a little bit louder. But yeah, so that's another alternative. So that's pre-glued edge banding, and you can see this is, you can buy birch, or you can buy red oak, you can buy whatever, basically whatever you're working on. If you're working on melamine, you can get melamine edge banding. It's pre-glued also. All right, so this is where planning comes in. I still have my stop block set to the exact dimensions that we cut the shelves at. Now, if you remember, when we did the solid edge banding, I left it just a little bit proud on one side. So we have it flush on this side here, and then we left it a little bit long here, just about 1 or 2 millimeters. And the reason I did that is so that I could trim it up flush completely without having to try to get it exact when I cut everything on the miter saw. So all I gotta do is go right back to my stop block, drop my rail down, and now you can see this little piece is sticking out right there. We're just gonna trim that off on both pieces. So now we have everything sanded down. I put a little wood putty in the nail holes that we made in the front of the edge banding, and then lightly sanded those down also. So now when you put these in, obviously they have to go in on an angle because you don't want to force it in this way, because even though they'll fit this way, once you get the face frames on there, there's going to be an overhang. You're never going to be able to put them in that way again. So they are made to go in on an angle like this. So you will go in on an angle, go up to the top, and you have your shelf pins installed, and you push it back to the back panel, and everything fits perfectly. And now it's starting to shape up and look like a cabinet. And you can see everything is dead even. That LL32 system for the shelf pin holes is absolutely insane. Okay guys, that's it for this video in the series. This is part 3 of the cabinet making, the adjustable shelves. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys got something out of it. There are many ways to make these shelves. I showed you 2 of them today. One is the solid edge banding. The second one is the thin edge banding veneer with the pre-glue. If you are doing just a regular thin veneer on short shelves, then just use the regular thin edge banding that is already pre-glued, because you can just heat it up with a household iron. It takes a couple of seconds. You've seen me do it before, and that's a good alternative. You can cut this as thick or as thin as you want. If these shelves were any longer than they are, I would definitely have made the plywood shelf part of it a little bit more narrow, and then I would have made the edge banding, the solid edge banding, thicker, and then I would have used dominoes to attach it. But these are not going anywhere. I'm putting pressure on them. They're only going to be holding shirts and jeans and, you know, t-shirts, stuff like that, sweatshirts. These are built-ins in a bedroom, so they're just going to be housing clothes. So don't worry about a weight-bearing issue on something like this. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. Hope you got something out of it. In the next video, we're going to be working on the face frames, and after the face frames will come the doors. We're going to be doing shaker flat panels, so make sure that you stay tuned for the rest of the series, because like I said before in the other videos, we're taking this all the way from the beginning to installation. Now, you may already know how to build cabinets and do shelves with edge banding and stuff like that, but not everybody does. So if you are experienced, maybe you'll get something out of this and look at things in a different way. If you're not experienced, then I hope this helped you a lot. All right, guys, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, if you learned something today. And also, make sure you hit the picture of a notification bell. That'll notify you every time I upload a video so you don't miss anything. I'm grouping all these videos into a playlist called Cabinet Making Series. So this will be already the third video. Go back and check out parts 1 and 2 on my channel in the playlists. And I hope to see you guys there. All right, guys, thanks for joining me in my shop, and I will see you next time.